All right, so Newsmax, you do an interview with them, and you say you will announce that you're going to run right after Celebrity Apprentice on the last night of the show. You will do what?
Well, I will be announcing as to whether or not I'll run sometime prior to June. I've been saying that for a long time. Newsmax actually took a little bit of liberty when they said I will be running. I'm not going to be running. I will announce what I will be doing sometime prior to June.
Okay, and
which I've been consistently saying.
Where are you now in the decision-making process?
Well, I tell you, we just had polls, and the polls are, as you know, because I watched you the other day. You were the first one that told me, because I'm watching your television show, and I'm saying, gee whiz, I'm number one. Mm-hmm. But the polls have been really amazing. CNN came out with a poll which was phenomenal. I'm in first place with Governor Huckabee, who's a good guy, by the way, who I've gotten to know recently, and I think really he's a terrific guy. And it's always bad. You know, you're supposed to compete against people. I do much better when I don't like the people. Mm-hmm. But I happen to like him, and I like a couple of the other candidates.
Well, we'll talk about that in a second. You said you are Barack Obama's worst nightmare. Why?
Well, I understand him. I understand what's going on. I understand the mindset. They do not want to run against me. I get it, and he doesn't get it. And I watched that speech yesterday. I thought it was an outrage. That wasn't a speech on deficit. That was a political speech. That means he's running, and that was his first speech. I thought it was ridiculous. Raising taxes and really not doing anything having to do with the deficit. I thought it was an outrage. And look, he's been a horrible president. I always said the worst president was Jimmy Carter. Guess what? Jimmy Carter goes to second place. Barack Obama has been the worst president ever. The history of this country, Barack Obama is number one. And he had his little minion go on television.
David Plouffe.
And say, David whoever, nobody knows how to pronounce his name.
Yeah.
He ought to make that clear. But he had his person go on television and make a statement like, oh, gee, we certainly
He said
would
you
like
had
to see.
zero chance you would get hired by the American people.
And yet I just won in the recent CNN poll, the independent vote. And I was the one that was tied, statistically tied with Obama, the only Republican that was statistically tied with Obama. And I haven't even done anything. You know, I haven't said I'm running. So, and you know, the polls, and one of the pollsters actually said that one of the reasons I don't go even higher is that a lot of people don't think I'm running. They think I'm having a good time talking to people like you. Mm-hmm. You become my friend for a month, but I've watched you so much, I consider you like a friend for a long time. But the fact is, a lot of people in the polls don't vote for me because they think I'm just having a good time. Mm-hmm. They think that I'm promoting Celebrity Apprentice, which I'm absolutely not. Mm-hmm. And you just told me how good the ratings are in Celebrity Apprentice. I don't need this. I don't need this.
Let's look at these polls. The CNN poll. There was a Newsmax online poll, over 500,000 people.
That was the best of all.
That was the best of all. You're second in New Hampshire in a poll that came out. Mitt Romney first. You're second.
And he lives there.
Yeah. Okay. So he's from Massachusetts. So the question is, why do you think your message is resonating? What do you think it is about you at this moment that all of a sudden you come out of nowhere, you say, I'm thinking about running for president, and these poll numbers go up? What do you think's happening?
Well, I think I'm known as a really good businessman, and I am. And by the way, if I run, I will have to disclose my finances, and my finances are phenomenal. Much better than anyone knows. You know, they know I'm rich, but I've done a great job. I've made a lot of great decisions. And that will be disclosed if and when I decide to run. And I actually look forward to that. It'll be, I think, a very positive thing.
All right, let me ask you about the nomination. So you are running for the Republican nomination,
yes,
if you run. Okay, you described yourself politically as a conservative?
I am a very conservative person.
Very conservative person. But
with a big heart. I like to say I'm conservative with a big heart.
Recently you said that if you don't get the nomination that you would run as an independent. Now, you're asking Republicans...
Well, I didn't say that. I said I would certainly think about that. Because the question was, what happens if you don't get the nomination? And this was also before the new polls came out that showed me leading. But they said, what happens if you don't get? Would you consider running? I said, yes, I would consider running as an independent.
All right, but if you do that, that would be the greatest gift to Barack Obama. And
unless I won. Unless I won.
Well, in reality, though, if you're a conservative and you didn't get the nomination, you're running against another conservative, you split the vote, Barack Obama sails into the presidency.
Unless I thought I could win as an independent, I wouldn't do that, because if I lost, I'd get a tremendous amount of votes, and I would take them all from the Republican Party, which would be terrible. So unless I thought I could win, really win as an independent, I would not do that, because I wouldn't want to come in second or third place and Obama ends up winning.
Okay, so that if you thought that it would hurt the chances of defeating Obama, you would not do it.
The only way I'd run would be if I didn't get the Republican nomination and felt through polls and lots of other things that are pretty good and pretty scientific and seem to work over the years. I've been watching lots of polls, and they seem to be pretty accurate, amazingly, right? If I thought I could win, absolutely win as an independent, I'd do it. If I didn't, it would be devastating, because you wouldn't have a Republican in. So I would have a real problem unless I really felt certain, pretty certain of victory.
You describe yourself as a conservative. What does it mean for you when you say that you are a conservative person? How do you describe that?
Well, I think I have great values. I think I really have a great, solid, strong value. I love this country. I feel so strongly about this country. I love people that work. This weekend, I'm making a speech in Boca Raton, Florida, and there was supposed to be like 200 people before it was announced that I was speaking, and now I hear they have thousands. They had to leave the hall. It's going to be in some park where they have thousands and thousands of people coming, which really makes me feel good. But I really relate to the Tea Party people. Somebody was asking me, in fact, every reporter asks me, what do you think of the Tea Party? And I said, I think they're great. They're workers. They love the country. And, you know, their greatest service has been, and this is very simple, they've made everyone think. They were the first ones that brought up the deficit. We were just riding this deficit, borrowing more and more money. They were the first ones that really made both Democrats and Republicans think. So I think the Tea Party has served an unbelievable and performed an unbelievable function.
How do you describe, and some Republicans will say, wait a minute, he wants the Republican nomination, years gone by, you've donated to people like Harry Reid, Chuck Schumer, other Democrats. Why?
Well, I get along with everybody. And, you know, can I be honest? You're a pretty conservative guy. Yeah. But don't you think it's time? I get along with everybody. I get along. I also have plenty of enemies, as you probably know. My worst enemy will be Obama.
Probably.
Rosie. Well, you said Rosie. I didn't. Okay. Right. But the fact is, I get along with people. I also come from a place that's almost exclusively Democratic.
New York.
I'm in New York, okay? I mean, the Republicans don't even think they have a chance, and, you know, maybe I would have a chance, okay? But they don't even think about New York. So I've lived in New York. This building, this great tower, and many other great towers that are, they're in New York. Everyone's Democratic. So what am I going to do? Contribute to Republicans? Well, am I going to contribute to, I mean, one thing, I'm not stupid. Am I going to contribute to a Republican for my whole life when they run against some Democrat? And the most they can get is 1% of the vote. Okay.
All right, so
but I think more importantly, and this question will always be asked. I mean, I've contributed to Schumer. I've known Schumer for many, many years, and I have a good relationship with him. The fact is that I think it's time maybe that we all do get along.
Who were the people that you might be running against? You mentioned you like Mike Huckabee. You know the other candidates, Mitt Romney,
I sort of like them all. You know, I have a problem. They've treated me so nicely. I have such a problem. Everyone said such nice things. I saw Santorum said something nice.
Newt Gingrich did. Sarah Palin did.
Newt Gingrich last month joined my club in Washington. A little before he heard about this, in all fairness. But I already have his money.
He said something nice about you in a speech this weekend.
Well, that's very nice. I mean, so I wish I didn't like them. Does that make sense to you?
Well, you're going to have to debate each other.
Nice things. I know. They're all saying these nice things about me. I have a hard time. So the truth is, I watched Paul Enti the other day. I don't know him, but he said these wonderful things about Donald Trump. And I can't now say, oh, gee, this and that.
Well, you
say, oh, gee, this and that.
Well, look, you're all...
The good news is I don't think Barack Obama is going to be saying nice things, and that's a positive.
No, I think that's obvious.
I think I'm a great negotiator. I think I will do a better job than anybody because I'm really a great negotiator. I know how to negotiate. I know how people are ripping us off. I know why they're ripping us off, and I know how to solve the problem. And as far as yesterday is concerned and what's going on over the last couple of days, the numbers aren't as bad as you're thinking. Because what's happening is if you take away $300 billion where China's ripping us, and you take away Colombia, and you take away virtually every nation in the world who's making a huge, let's use the word profit on the United States, when you start equalizing that, not even to make money off them, just to neutralize it, China shouldn't be making $300 billion on us this year.
How do you get to...
But therefore, the numbers aren't as bad as what you're seeing. In other words, that has a huge impact.
$14 trillion is a big nut headed towards $24 trillion.
No, it is. But we're losing so much money. Every country we deal with, virtually, we're losing money. fact, when Japan had its horrible accident, they said to me, "What do you think?" I said, "You know what? They've treated us like fools for many years, but still we should help them." Aren't I a nice guy?
You're a nice guy.
But they've treated us like fools for years and years and years. They've treated us like a bunch of dopes. But you know what?
But would you deal with entitlement, Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid? I mean,
you have to deal with it.
Because
I do worry about, I have a lot of respect for Paul Ryan. I do worry that he's a little bit far out in front because the Democrats are going to take that Medicare word, that little word called Medicare, which to a lot of people means senior citizens, and they're going to take that word and they're going to say, oh, senior, senior, senior. And the Republicans have to be careful not to fall into a Democratic trap.
And that is that the trap is that they will be seen as being mean towards the elderly.
Towards seniors. And I will tell you, me, I'm protecting, I don't care what plan the Republicans put, I'm protecting the seniors. The seniors are, in a certain way, the heart of this country. And I'm protecting the seniors.
In other words, promises
but I can tell you.
But do we have to adjust? Look, discretionary spending is 12% of the budget. The real money,
it's not enough.
The trillions are in Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid. There's got to be some adjustment.
Things have to be done,
but
it has to be done with both parties together. It has to be done together. You can't have the Republicans get too far ahead of this issue.
So you would say,
well, they're going to lose elections.
Yeah. Well,
hey, if I run, I don't want to lose this election because I can do a lot of things for this country, and I don't want to lose this election. And I just don't think that, again, Ryan's great, but I don't think he should get too far out in front of this issue because I know, you just said, I know Schumer, I know this, I know that. I know exactly what they're doing. They love having somebody even talk about the word Medicare.
Yeah, because then
they're going to then say, oh, they're going to cut Medicare. Even though these guys will end up doing it, you got an election to win. And I think the Republicans, frankly, are too far out ahead. You know, this debate is supposed to be led by a president. And
he punted.
You have to be very careful that the Republicans don't go too far out in front because they're going to lose a big election coming in 2012 if that happens.
But do you really think you can balance the budget? You become president. How long would it take you to balance the budget?
Well, it would make a huge amount of progress. And you would do some of this stuff, but it wouldn't be the kind of numbers. Look, we're losing so much money. And not only money. We're losing jobs. Don't forget, China is taking our jobs. They're not only taking our money, but they're taking our jobs. So we're losing money, we're taking jobs. Now that means the economy can never come back because the best thing for balancing the budget is to have a strong economy. And the economy can never come back if we're going to always have high unemployment.
Here we are. You've got a beautiful view of Central Park, and 9/11 happens here. Radical Islam. President, when he first got into office, went on an apology tour. America's arrogant. Okay. So the question is, do you think he understands the real dangers that led up to 9/11? 3,000 people killed right here in this city. And you recently spoke about the Quran. You said it gives you a negative vibe, and you got some criticism for it.
Well, I didn't see the criticism, but obviously there's something going on because every time you turn on a television, 100 people are killed in a grocery store in Iraq.
Yeah.
Or, I mean, every day a bomb goes off, and I see the wounded, and I spend a lot of time with the wounded, the soldiers, our great soldiers. And they come back with a missing arm.
Legs.
No legs. And for what? For what? Now, I will say this, and some people think it's harsh, and I think it's common sense. And a lot of people think it's great. When I first said it, which was 1 week ago. We go to Iraq, we spend $1.5 trillion, and our cities are dying all over the place. They don't have any money. We spend $1.5 trillion. Iraq has the second largest oil fields in the world. $15 trillion worth of oil, second to Saudi Arabia. We go over, we decapitate their armies. Their armies are wiped out. They have weak armies. It's a corrupt society anyway. I mean, it's totally corrupt what's going on over there. We then leave. And Iran, which has fought for years, back and forth, because they were basically of equal strength. Well, now they're not. Iran will come in, and they'll take over Iraq within 2 seconds after we leave. They're gone. Forget it. It's not even a contest. I hear, Sean, they're already starting. I don't even think they have to fire a bullet, because to be honest with you, I hear they're already making great political inroads in Iraq. So within about 2 minutes after we leave, Iran is going to come over, take over Iraq. That's one thing. But they're going to take the oil. So they're going to have the second best oil fields in the world, second biggest oil fields in the world, that we made possible with our soldiers, thousands of people dead, the second biggest oil fields in the world, that we made possible with our soldiers, thousands of people dead, wounded, and 1.5, less importantly, $1.5 trillion. So I said very simply that if it's me, we take the oil. You know, in the old days, when you win a country, you win a country. Now with our stupid people, we win a country, we lose money, we lose soldiers, we lose lives, and then we leave.
How about a minimum that they pay for their liberation?
Look,
at a minimum,
they pay us back the 1.5 trillion. That's at a minimum.
Iran, the nuclear threat is real. The way our relationship with Israel is strained, I think we're getting to a point where the Iranian nuclear facilities have got to be taken out at some point. Difficult job. If the Israelis, if you're president, the Israelis see the need that they've, for their national security, got to take it out, would you support them, and you think it's in our best geographic political interest to do so?
Well, first of all, I was the Grand Marshal of the Israeli Day Parade 10 years ago when, believe me, it was dangerous because there was a little war going on and a lot of problems. And I walked down Fifth Avenue, and Jewish friends of mine still remember that day. I have a park named after me in Israel that I donated. And I'm a big fan of Israel. I will say this, I don't understand. I have so many Jewish friends that are big Obama fans, and they're supporting Obama and giving tremendous amounts. Wealthy guys live in New York, wealthy, hedge funds, real estate guys. They're supporting Obama.
Why?
Obama's terrible for Israel. He's terrible for Israel.
I agree.
You know, it's interesting with Obama, too. If you look at Wisconsin, he made a pledge that he was going to march in Wisconsin. He was going to put on his walking shoes and march with those teachers. Where is he? He's all talk. He's all talk. Unfortunately, he's also action, but it's always the wrong action.
All right, let's talk a little bit. You mentioned recently that you're a Christian, that you go to church. How important is your faith to Donald Trump?
Very important. I'm a Protestant. I'm a Presbyterian. Very important. I'm a believer. I'm also, busy and probably busier than I should be. But I am a Christian. I'm Protestant. I'm Presbyterian. Busy and probably busier than I should be. But I am a Christian. I'm Protestant. I'm Presbyterian.
Pro-life?
I'm pro-life.
Gay marriage? Where do you stand?
I'm against gay marriage. And, not easy to do in New York, but I'm against. And I have changed views on different things over the years.
Like?
Well, like pro-life. I was always torn by it. I'm very much, to take the other extreme, very much in favor of the death penalty, especially for terrorists and especially for people that, killers that you see so many with the girls that are being killed and then they capture these guys. I am so for the death penalty. And I think as far as terrorism is concerned, death penalty with a speedy trial. Look at this. Look at the guy that knocked down the World Trade Center. They're still negotiating where? I mean, last week I heard they're finally going to try him in a military camp. This is after years.
Military tribunal.
So he'll go for years and years, probably die of old age before they even try him. I'm for speedy but fair trials. Fair. But speedy trials. Speedy.
You support military tribunals over bringing him to New York?
Absolutely. I think it would have been a mistake. What's the purpose of bringing him? First of all, what's the purpose of bringing him into New York? You'll have riots, you'll have this, you'll have that. You have the military. Our military is great. The other thing I'd do, I wouldn't cut the military. If anything, I'd increase the military. We would have, with me, the strongest. I hate when they say we're going to cut the military. Why? Because China's taking all our money? Because little Colombia, they made $4 billion on us last year. Colombia in South America, fourth largest in South America. They made $4 billion.
Who are past presidents that you admire most?
Well, I really liked and knew a little bit Ronald Reagan, and I really liked him. Not only his policy, he's a smart guy, but so much smarter. I always sort of have to laugh to myself when people try and criticize that level of intelligence. And I loved his style. I loved what he represented I said, there's our president. I would see him sometimes. He once gave a speech, I think it was at the Lincoln Memorial, and he was dressed in a tuxedo, and I said, there's something to that. There's our president. I thought he represented something very special for this country. And it was a much more special time. What I loved also about him, it was no games. When Jimmy Carter lost the hostages when they were in Iran, they'd still be there. And Reagan said, essentially, they will be back the first day, or they will let go the next day.
They were afraid of him.
Because, as I say, it's the messenger. People say, what would you do to OPEC? There's plenty you do. They wouldn't even be there if it wasn't for us, okay? So they say, well, what would you do? It's the messenger. You know, I have business people that I deal with all the time. I can send one guy into a room and then another guy into the room. Say the same thing. One guy comes back with the bacon, the other one doesn't, into the room. Say the same thing. One guy comes back with the bacon, the other one doesn't, all the time. It's the messenger.
You would drill in Anwar. You'd drill in the 48 states.
Absolutely.
You would build nuclear facilities.
Absolutely.
You build refineries.
Now, I will tell you this. Nuclear, and I always say that you have to be a little bit flexible in life. You can't just say, boom. I'm a big driller, okay, and with care. You know, I've gotten many environmental awards. I build these great golf courses. I build great buildings. I get a lot of awards for what I do. So I know the environmental thing probably better than anybody. I also know it's carried to an extent that's absolutely insane. I mean, I've seen jobs stop that would have employed thousands of people, but they can't because there's a piece of grass that they found.
Oh, there's a turtle lake.
I have seen incredible developments with tremendous job-producing capabilities stopped many times because of swamp pink, a little piece of grass like this that doesn't even look good. Okay, I mean, I've seen things stopped environmentally that are absolutely, and I also know, see, I really play the game at a very high level. I have many environmental consultants, and when they come to me and tell me why we can't do something and why we have to do this and why we have to do that, and then they laugh, and I say, this is ridiculous. They say, yeah, but that's how we make our money. And they go up to Albany and they go to Washington and they make it impossible so that we have to hire them in order to get around all these rules and regulations. It's hurting our country. You go to China, they're filling in a section of the ocean to build a city. I say to the guys doing it, how long did it take you to get your environmental permits?
A week.
They don't even know what I'm talking about. They go, this is the ocean. You know, they're filling in a section a quarter of a mile by a quarter of a mile. Big.
And that to build the
and I
casinos?
say, in order to build other things, a lot of things, buildings, in order to build cities. But when I say, because we're so used to it. You know, if you drop a pebble into the Hudson River, you get the electric chair, okay? A pebble. So here they are filling in. You see thousands of trucks, just truck after truck. I mean, literally thousands. They have dump trucks lined up miles long, dumping. And we don't see that in this country.
If I cut down a tree on my property, I got a $15,000 fine.
It's going to be very interesting, but I don't want to say it now, Sean, but I will say this. I don't love this issue. I'd much rather be talking about how China is ripping us off, how OPEC's... That's what I'm really good at. I understand it. I can do such a great job. But this issue came up about 6 weeks ago, and I've heard about it for years, but I never thought too much about it. And I assumed he was born in this country. But 6 weeks ago, I started really looking into it. He's got a certificate of live birth. That's, by the way, despite what certain liberal press says, that's not a birth certificate. It's a big, big step lower. In fact, in some places, you can't get married or get a driver's license with a certificate of live birth, okay? So I say to myself,
and it only has a stamp, no signature.
It's got a stamp. It's got a stamp. No, it's got a stamped signature. By the way, I have my birth certificate. I think I'll show it. I think I'm going to bring it down to Boca Raton this weekend.
Okay.
But I have mine. It's got stamps. It's got 3 different signatures. It's got everything. Everything's official. You have to see this thing. It's like a certificate of live birth is not appropriate. Now, I say to myself, why? A few just simple questions. Why doesn't he show his birth certificate? Number one. You know, they say it's sealed. Well, but for the person, you can release it. If it's a person, you can release. Sure, it's sealed. It should be sealed. That's great. But the person, you know, I actually sent to New York for my birth certificate. And they actually got on the phone. They said, Mr. Trump, I'm sorry to do this, sir. You have to give me your Social Security number. You have to prove it's really you I'm talking to, Papa. I went through a whole big thing. Okay, but when they figured out it was actually me, they sent it to me. I had to pay $38, and they sent me my birth certificate. They could do the same thing with him. And I say, why did he spend millions of dollars on trying to stay away from this issue? Why doesn't he give his birth certificate?
Well, the one thing on his side is that they had these announcements in the newspaper 8 days after.
8 days later.
Yeah.
It was 8 days. Look, he's got a grandmother in Kenya who said he was born in Kenya at the hospital. Then there was bedlam in the room. Bedlam. I don't mean like a little, you know, because he was close to becoming president. And there were a lot of people in that room. And she was talking to a reporter with a lot of handlers, a lot of Obama handlers. So they have the grandmother, she said Kenya. Then all of a sudden, 51 seconds later, He asked a question again. And you hear people scream, no, no, Hawaii, Hawaii. Okay, give me a break. Now, the other one was 8 or 9 days later from the reported birth date. But you don't know if it was even the reported. But they could have easily come from Kenya or someplace.
The issue could go away in a minute. Just show the
I don't
certificate.
understand. Why doesn't he show? Why did he spend millions of dollars on trying to stay away from the issue? Now, it's one of two things. Either he wasn't born in the country, or he doesn't have a birth certificate that, or there's something on the birth certificate that he doesn't want people to see.
What do you think that could be?
I don't know. I mean, maybe it says
religion?
Maybe it says he's Muslim, which wouldn't bother me. No. I mean, maybe it says maybe it says he's Muslim, which wouldn't bother me. I mean, if it's that thing, you know, if that's it, it's it. It's what it is.
Well, he went to a Muslim school in Indonesia. He talks about studying the Quran. He talks about one of the most beautiful moments being, you know, prayer time at sunset.
Look, he was born Barry Sotero. Somewhere along the line, he changed his name. I heard he had terrible marks, and he ends up in Harvard. He wrote a book that was better than Ernest Hemingway, but his second book was written by an average person. He shouldn't have written the second book.
You suspect Bill Ayers wrote it?
I'd say Bill Ayers wrote the book.
Why do you think it's Bill Ayers?
Because everyone says he's a super genius, and he was a great writer. And Bill Ayers just came out recently because he's not in love with Obama, because like Obama dropped Reverend Wright like a dog. He dropped him like a dog. You know, for 20 years, he's in Reverend Wright's church congregation, okay? I'm Protestant, and I understand. He's in Reverend Wright's congregation for 20 years, listening to Reverend Wright spew hate against white people. And all of a sudden, he drops him like a dog. And Reverend Wright hates him now, actually hates him from what I hear.
Well, he said,
but the same thing with Bill Ayers. The same thing with Bill Ayers. He was best friends with Bill Ayers. Bill Ayers was a super genius. And a lot of people have said he wrote the book. Well, recently, as you know, last week, Bill Ayers came out and said he did write the book. Barack Obama wouldn't be president. And you know, I wrote many bestsellers, and also #1 bestsellers, including The Art of the Deal. I know something about writing. And I want to tell you, the guy that wrote the first book didn't write the second book. Obama made a big mistake when he wrote the second book, because the second book was not Ernest Hemingway. It was about 37 classes below. So the first book is Ernest Hemingway plus. The second book was written by somebody that was much more average. How do you have average marks? How do you have bad marks and get into Harvard?
Let me go back to the issue, because I want to talk about media coverage of Obama. Because you're going to have full coverage of your finances, every woman that you've dated, your marriages, all that's going to come up. Fair game?
Well, I think it's fair, but I do also think this. My finances are great. I think when you get into social things, I just think this country has big problems. And I sit down and I look at the problems of this country, and I just think that we have more important things to discuss with, like...
Than who you dated.
Yeah, than who I dated or who... And you know what? I have unbelievable great relationships with a lot of people, and I have a great relationship with my wife. But we really... That's the problem with this process. In China, they picked the meanest, toughest, smartest guy. Ruthless, and he's our negotiator. In this country, we pick a guy that's never had a problem, never done anything. I mean, look at Obama. Obama had bad marks, and he gets into Harvard. Okay? He wasn't a good student. You know, everyone thinks he was like the super genius. He wasn't a genius. He wasn't a good student. You know, everyone thinks he was like the super genius. He wasn't a genius. He had bad marks, and it's a big story. Everyone says, how did he get into Harvard? How did he get into Columbia? He had horrible marks, supposedly.
Why are they hiding some of his records and his thesis?
He doesn't release his marks. Nobody knows what his marks, but everybody said, because there was some released, where his marks were lousy, and yet he gets into Harvard. I mean, this guy really is leading a charmed life. I have to be honest with you. Somebody said, what's his biggest asset? He is lucky politically. He really is. He's led a charmed life.
I mean,
the media is letting him get away with it. Right. I'll give you an example, a better example. Tony Resco. If you did Tony Resco, you'd be in jail right now.
I believe it.
Tony Resco is his pretty much mentor, was his big political contributor. There was another guy he dropped like a hot rock. So you got Reverend Wright, you got Bill Ayers, you got Tony Resco. He drops these guys, and the press leaves him alone. He buys a house, and then Tony Resco, his biggest political supporter, who's in jail and a mobster, buys the lot next door. Now, I'm a great real estate guy. I made a lot of money. You'll see, maybe, assuming I run, okay? You're going to see. You're going to love it. You'll be very impressed with my numbers. I'm a really good real estate guy.
Yeah.
But he buys the house next door, the lot next door. Obama wants to expand his house. So Resco sells him a little chunk of that lot at, from what I can see, under market value.
Rendering his lot unbuildable.
Rendering Resco's lot either unbuildable or nobody wants it. Nobody wants to have, hey, Mr. Schwartz goes up to buy the house next door and they say, well, what happened to the back of it? I mean, where's the back of my lot? I don't want to buy this lot. So Resco gives him a piece under market and, more importantly, destroys the value of the lot he has. Now, when I heard that, I said, oh, that's the end of his campaign. He's out. Because if it was you, me, or anybody else. So here's a guy, did one deal in his entire life, and it was Tony Resco. That's the only deal he's ever done. It's pretty amazing how nothing happened. And it's pretty amazing how Resco is in jail now, and he never ratted out Obama.
I spent more time than anybody in the media on the issue of Reverend Wright and Bill Ayers. He was asked one question about Bill Ayers. Oh, he's a guy in the neighborhood. And then we discovered he started his political career in Bill Ayers' house. He gave speeches with him. He sat on boards with him. Okay. So,
and he acted like he hardly knew him.
Hardly knew him. And his answer was he's some guy in the neighborhood.
Yeah, some guy.
Some guy.
Some guy that wrote his book.
This is a guy that's unrepentant about bombing the Pentagon, the Capitol, and New York City Police headquarters.
Horrible.
And on 9/11, of all days, he had that in the New York Times. Media ignores it. Reverend Wright, I was fortified by him. He drove around listening to tapes of him. He is, like family to me. And then, of course, he got thrown under the bus. There's a picture in that church magazine.
Both of these guys hate Obama because he dropped them. And you know what? There's one thing. I'm like a loyalist. I have people that, I try to be loyal to people. He's a very disloyal guy because he could have stuck by Reverend Wright and he could have gotten away with it.
How does he stick by a guy that says GD America after 9/11?
He could have said, gee, I like the guy. He differs from me. So he could have done something. He dropped him like a rock. And Reverend Wright supposedly is just incensed right now. Okay, incensed. Who cares? Bill Ayers, bad guy, but a brilliant guy. I'd love to find out who wrote that book. Because you know what? Without that book, he's not president. That book was so brilliant.
What does it tell you about...
That he became president because the book was so great. Everyone said, oh, look at this guy, look at the book.
If Donald Trump was hanging out with mobsters and doing business deals with mobsters, real estate deals, wouldn't your associates matter in terms of people's perception of you before you become the president of the United States?
Well, the Tony Resco thing is the thing I least understand. Because if you did the deal, if I did the deal, if anybody did that deal, we'd, at a minimum, not be in office and probably be behind bars.
If you and your wife were or your wife was on a magazine cover with Mrs. Farrakhan, who I think is a vicious, virulent anti-Semite and racist, which Michelle Obama was on a cover with Mrs. Farrakhan. He lives 2 blocks away from Obama. He's within the radical community in Chicago. Is that a legitimate question? Did you ever meet him? Do you know him? And would that have an impact, do you think, on the American people in terms of him?
Well, I think it would, but I just don't think the press. You cover it. A couple of people cover it, but most of them
I don't have access. He won't come on this show.
Well, most of them don't cover it. Most of them don't cover it, and it amazes me. It amazes me the free ride he gets. As an example, when I talk about the Bertha issue, and it's not my favorite issue, believe me, but when I talk about it, I have some reporters, you could see they're visibly angry at you. And it's not my favorite issue, believe me. But when I talk about it, I have some reporters, you could see they're visibly angry at me for even bringing it up. But there's a real question. I told you before, when I first started, I assumed he was born here, when it was first dead. Now, I have a real doubt. So they should have a real doubt, too. They protect him. They're protecting Obama. Tony Resco, I mean, why aren't they out there looking into that matter?
I did. We got a lot of heat during the election process because we brought up all of these questions.
They never gave Resco a chance to rat him out. And yet anybody else, they let him rat out.
They would have had Woodward and Bernstein, over there every day.
And the funny thing, if I'm a reporter, hey, look, if I want to report, I want to be Bob Woodward.
Yeah.
Okay, I want to be Bob Woodward. You could have Bob Woodward if they found out about the birth certificate, if they found out about Tony Resco. They could be Bob Woodward.
Look, I said in the last election, journalism died in America. They will be much tougher on you. Their scrutiny will be much tougher of any
and every time they're
Republican
tough
candidate.
with me, I'm going to bring up Investigator Esco. By the way,
is this the difference, though? I mean, you
Sean,
taking on these issues.
Sean, let me just finish this. Yeah. Because they will be tough. Here's the problem. I've done hundreds of deals. Hundreds. I've done transactions and deals by the hundreds. I've done great. Okay? I mean, I've done, mostly great deals. And they will be tough on me. Here's a guy who did one deal. One deal. But they'll go through every deal. Did the secretary dot that I? Oh, gee, there's a typo. Therefore, Trump did something wrong. It's really terrible. I've always heard that a very successful person cannot run for political office, okay? And I understand it. But the country's in such bad shape that I feel I have an obligation to do it.
And you're willing to open all those books.
Yeah, I open my books. Hey, look, I'm going to do a financial disclosure.
Yeah.
Assuming I run, I'm going to do a financial disclosure. And by the way, the papers submitted to me are not big enough.
All right. Donald Trump,
it's been great
to see it. Really appreciate your time.
And I love your show.
Thank you. Thank you.